Thank you. It's good to see you guys. How you doing, North Carolina? I wore a Tar Heel tie for you. So it's good to be here. And it is I'll say a few words, and I actually want to hear from you, because I think one of the themes of this convention is actually opening up the dialogue in this country. Right? We've had this culture of fear that has just spread across our country like an epidemic. They have peddled this myth of national division. And I do think it's a myth. Because if you think about it, think about most of the people you know at home. Think of your neighbors, think of your parents of your kids' classmates. Most people in this country share the same set of ideals in common, but they have peddled a message of national division that has created the illusion that somehow we're divided to a breaking point. And that's created this culture of fear. But what happened on Saturday night, and it is still something that I know all of us are reeling from. It was a tragedy. A life was lost of a good patriot. But it was a national tragedy that we avoided by literally a hair's breadth. And if there's one silver lining that comes out of it, I want it to be this, that it's a wake-up call for our country. It's a wake-up call for all of us. I don't care, Republican or Democrat, to step back and answer who we are as Americans. What does it mean to be a citizen of this country? Are we a random geographic space, diverse with a bunch of different shades of melanin, two-legged higher mammals, walking around doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day, suffering through depression and anxiety, going through the motions? That's what the nation looks like it becomes at times to me. But no, that's not us. America is still a vision of what that place can be. We're still united by common principles that set this country into motion. That's what this week is about. This is our chance to define, not just partisan slogans against the Democrats, and I've done plenty of that too. But the way we're going to win this election this year isn't even by focusing on the other side. It isn't by focusing on Biden, who, by the way, is not going to be the nominee. It is going to be by defining who we are and what we actually stand for. Not just as Republicans, but as Americans. That's what's going to win this election for us. That's what's going to save this country. Two things we need to do in this country right now. I think the top two items are, one is rediscover our national identity. Revive national pride in the next generation of Americans. That's the number one thing I care about doing in this country. And I know Donald Trump is going to be the president who delivers it. And then number two is very practical. Part of how we do that is we got to get in there and at long last shut down that fourth branch of government. Shut down the deep state once and for all. That's how we save this country. You have a lot of people, I get this a lot, because this was the main theme of my presidential campaign last year. Shut down the administrative state. Shut down the shadow government. Yes, we have mass deportations coming of millions of illegal immigrants from this country. But don't forget the other mass deportation of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of Washington, D.C. That's coming. And I talked about that all last year. And one of the areas of pushback I sometimes get is, because, we're not doing the rah-rah stuff, let's address the objection. The objection is, why didn't that happen in President Trump's first term? Here's an answer to that question. It's a very specific answer. The Supreme Court in the last 2 years has given us the actual toolkit to do it. President Trump didn't have that back in 2017. That's the hard truth. But this time around, you got cases like West Virginia versus EPA in 2022. Several cases that came down this cycle, including overturning the Chevron doctrine. Now we have the chance to actually turn it into reality. This is not a dream anymore. This is not some pipe dream. This is a reality in plain sight. We're 4 months from getting there. The country that our founding fathers envisioned. Sometimes my campaign advisors last year, by the way, would say, don't talk about the administrative state. It bores people. Find a different thing to say. The reason I talk about it is that that's actually what we fought the American Revolution for in 1776. Right? What people miss about the deep state is that
it's not that these people actually want to do ill for us. That's what we miss. It's that they think they're benevolent for us. As King George believed in 1775. They believe that we, the people, cannot be trusted to self-govern. See, they think questions like climate change, we're just going to burn ourselves off the planet, racial equity and injustice. We, the people, can't be trusted to make those decisions. That requires enlightened elites in the back of palace halls in Old World England, in the back of three-letter government agency buildings in Washington, D.C. today. That's their view. And the revolution we fought in 1776 was to say hell no to that vision, for better or worse. And sometimes we'll get it wrong. We got to admit that. For better or worse, we, the people, still decide who governs. We, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. The people we elect to run the government should be the ones who actually run the government. And they owe their moral duty to the citizens of this nation, not any other one. That's what it means to be an American. That's why we fought a revolution in 1776. And that brings me back to the national pride question that I started with. The reason so many Americans no longer feel a sense of allegiance to their nation is that the people who actually run the country don't actually pledge any allegiance back to them. Heck, they weren't even elected in the first place. So that's the real truth, is if we drain the swamp actually get in there, fire those unelected bureaucrats, restore power back to we the people, then we have a revival of actual civic pride, actual skin in the game for every citizen, every young person, every person in Gen Z who's hungry to be part of something bigger than themselves. We can tell them once again, you can be. Your cause is staring you right here in the face. It is the United States of America. That's what George Washington believed. That's what our founding fathers believed. That's what won us a revolution 250 years ago, and it's what's going to win us what I believe is the revolution of 2024 that is coming. So thank you all for having me, guys. God bless you, and God bless your families, and may God bless your great state of North Carolina. We love you guys. Do not stop fighting until we get this job done. This country is worth saving, and save it we will. I promise you that. I told Jason I'd take a couple questions from you guys, so give the mic to you, and then I'll head out of here.
Hey, thank you for coming, Rocky Freeman, Hart County. How does what you just said tie in with the Chevron ruling from
Sure.
SCOTUS?
Sure. I like that we get into real stuff, real meat. So I'll give you two cases right here that are really important in order. One is West Virginia versus EPA 2 years ago. That said that if a regulator writes a rule that is a major policy question, that it's a major question, it has to go through Congress, not through the administrative state. That means that most federal regulations right now, not like some of them, I mean this literally, an overwhelming majority of federal regulations right now, under current law, are unconstitutional. The second thing now, thank you, that's worth celebrating. I think it's the most important Supreme Court case in a century. The second follow-up, the reinforcement came this year in a case called Loper that overturned the Chevron Doctrine. And what the Chevron Doctrine said is, effectively, federal courts had to defer to these agencies' judgments on what the law actually says. That's nuts. These are people who we never elected. The Constitution never imagined this fourth branch of government. Yet those are the people who have the final determination on what the law actually says to empower themselves to write regulations. They tossed that out the window. And then there was another case that just came down this year called Jarkissi, SEC versus Jarkissi, that said a lot of these agencies, many Americans don't know this, they are the judge, jury, executioner all in one. They write the rules, even though they were never elected. The rules have the binding effect of law. They will investigate you, prosecute you, and then get this, they even have a court in air quotes, within the agency that tries you and doles out fines to everyday Americans. From fishermen to people who are in the financial services sector to people who are in the coal industry. And the Supreme Court said no more of that in this country either. So the deck is clear. The path has been paved. What we require is two things, actually. This is real talk here. One is we had to win the election. Absolutely put Donald Trump back in office. But number two is we have to actually prepare ourselves to do the hard thing. Right? Once we actually get in there, we don't want to squander the opportunity we've been given. And I'll warn our fellow Americans, all of us, that, will there be some bumps in the road? Will there be some inconveniences when you shut down that one agency that you had a little soft spot in your heart for, or a little bit of a transition when you take an agency with 40,000 people down to 10,000 people? Yeah. There'll be a little clunkiness. We're ready for that. We can handle it. But that's what it means to stand up for the long run. And, despite what the media will say, we don't and we should not want to replace the left-wing nanny state with a right-wing nanny state. We want to dismantle the nanny state altogether. That, I believe, should be the future of the Republican Party. Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll go there and then we'll come right up here. Sir?
The empire will try to strike back.
Oh, the empire always strikes back.
What are they going to do, and how do we survive that?
So let's talk about the next 4 months. We talked about the next 4 years and then the next 40 years. Let's talk about the next 4 months. So, again, tough message here. Many of us, even here, I feel the atmosphere, are celebrating like this election is over. My message for you is this election hasn't even begun. The reality is, and I said this at the Republican debates last year, I was dismissed and derided for saying this in one of my closing statements. Biden is not going to be the nominee. I think that actually that became apparent after the debate to most people. It became even more apparent even in recent days. Because think about this now. He's got a fork in the road. He's got two choices. One is he can double down on his campaign message of histrionics about threats to our democracy, and yet he's the person who has now admitted that he shouldn't have been doing that in the wake of what happened on Saturday. So his other option is he can stop doing that, but then he doesn't have a campaign message left, because that's the whole campaign message. That's all he's been running on, not on his record, not on a vision for this country. It's just on threat to democracy that Donald Trump poses. So that's a fork in the road that doesn't end in a good place either way for Biden, which means we're not going to be running against Biden. I personally believe that they have been waiting for this week to play out. Let the VP nomination be announced. Let the convention, let them get all their speeches out of the way, feel good about themselves, and then turn to next month at their convention, which is within just a couple months of the election at that point, put up a new puppet. Which is what these people are. They're puppets in the Democratic Party. Biden's cognitive deficits are not a bug to the people who control him. They're a feature. I think the same could be said of Kamala Harris's cognitive deficits as well. And so the reality is this would create potentially the perfect opportunity for them to put up some new nominee that'll be in the honeymoon phase with the public when the election happens in November. What's that honeymoon phase, you say? Well, just think about it. Imagine you're a tortured prisoner being held captive in a dark room, and somebody sets you free. You don't care who it is. You're going to fall in love with them for a little bit. That's what's going to happen. That's what the Democrat Party is going to be liberated by whoever that new nominee is. And the public will feel a sense of honeymoon with that person. November comes right around. That's what I think could be at risk of coming. The first step to overcoming a challenge is to see it. So once we see it, then you play like you're from behind. Compete like you're behind, or else you soon will be. And that's true in sports as it is in politics, and that's my message to all of us. Play like this race hasn't even begun, because that's what I believe is actually true. Thank you. I appreciate it. I told you I'd come to you next, and then we'll come over here. Oh, we have a microphone here, so why don't we bring the microphone to her right after this question.
Nice to see you, Vivek. You are here. You're the second generation Indian. We are the first generation. You are here as your father. Okay. I've seen a lot of Indian-born kids here. When they are going to the colleges, they are coming into the Democratic Party.
Yep.
Their parents are Republicans like me, and many of maybe your father, yourself is Indian. We are Indian American, and you are Republican. We are proud of you. But looking at most Indian kids we are seeing, they are attacking into the Democratic policies.
Yeah.
Do you make any change to your generation, your second generation, and your age group, kids turning into the Republican Party?
Yeah.
That's my number one
Sure.
question. And number two question is, Usha Vance inclusiveness will get any impact on your generation? We are clear. We are with the Republican Party, and we are very worried about the generation of yours. Is little worried about the democratic policies and democratic thing, and how do we turn them into the Republican, useless, conservative mentality?
And the truth is, it's not just, it's true of what you say of the Indian American community. I see it. It's absolutely true. It's actually true across the board, right? A lot of young people automatically gravitate towards the Democratic Party because they're just taught that's what you're supposed to do. It's, peer pressure, social programming kind of thing. And my view on this is a little bit different. I also see an opportunity on the other side of that. So I think young people, all young people, I think it's true for kids of immigrants, I think it's probably true of all young people, have a natural tendency to want to rebel if you're 18 or 19. And I was thinking about maybe saying this. I'll be speaking tonight at the convention, and maybe this is a good point to put in there. It's interesting. You're 19 years old. You want to stick it to the man. You want to be a rebel. You want to be countercultural, right? You want to really be countercultural? Show up on your college campus lawn today and call yourself a conservative. Say you want to start a family, get married, have kids. That you want to teach your kids to believe in God and pledge allegiance to their country. See what happens. It'll be pretty liberating. That is actually the counterculture of our moment. And so in some ways, what began as a challenge to the system has become the new system. And that gives us an opportunity. So I don't think it's going to come through, beating young people over the head. I think it's going to be the opposite of that, actually. Is they've already been beaten over the head. And all we need to do is actually provide the space to actually say, you know what, you might disagree with some of the things I say, but the Republican Party is actually the party that defends to the death your right to say it without fear of violence. That's actually what it means to be American. And I think in Gen Z, we're about to see a dam break here and a tidal wave with a double tailwind behind it coming our way if we're actually willing to show up and have those conversations. We'll take the last question from you, ma'am, right here. We'll give you the final word.
Hi, Kate Boswell. Okay, I think we all in this room kind of know how Donald Trump rolls as far as selecting people for the positions. But in your ideal world with your skill set, what job would you do?
Look, one of the things I found in my life is, I'll give you two lessons. I come from the business world. I'm not from the world of politics. Two lessons I've learned is every time I've made a personal plan for myself, right? Plot it 6 steps ahead. It never works out that way anyway, right? But when you're called by your sense of purpose, then the plan reveals itself. And so for me, the two things I care about is reviving our national identity and shutting down the deep state. The first is a job for the president. I believe Donald Trump is up to that task. It's why I ran. But I believe Donald Trump, now more than ever, even more than 8 years ago, is up to that task today in his second term. And I'm going to support everything I can do to help him be the person who helps provide that missing sense of inspiration and identity and pride, especially for young people. But number two, I think I can help with. Shutting down that deep state across the board. And there'll be a way to do it through the executive branch. Think about going in and actually the mechanics of just reorganizing that bureaucracy. That needs to be done. And actually yesterday was a very interesting moment as well. It was actually, to your question too, it was actually a good friend of mine, JD, who got the vice presidential nomination. And I'm very happy, not just for him, for our country. I've known him for actually 11 years. We used to watch Cincinnati Bengals games because we're both from Southwest Ohio. Back when we were in law school, I didn't even know he was a conservative, and he didn't know the same about me, but we used to watch the Bengals together. His wife, Usha, was also our classmate. He's also from Ohio, and probably the question I fielded most yesterday was, what do you think happens with his seat as well, in the wake of one of our greatest fighters in the Senate no longer being there? So I don't have a specific personal plan, but I do have an objective. The objective is we're not going to reshape the regulatory state. I think there'll be temptations amongst some saying, hey, can we redirect it to do the good thing instead of the bad thing? Nope. The job is to get in there and actually shut it down. And however I can do that, you have my word, I'm going to do it. I love you guys. We've come to North Carolina a couple times. I think I'm coming again in the next few weeks. We're not going to stop showing up. You're not going to stop fighting for this country. And if you do, I promise you, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, I promise you that our best days as a country will still be ahead of us. Thank you. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you, guys. God bless. Thank you. Thank you. Great to see you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Keep up the good work, my man.